Leadership snaps and clicks from the writings of Andy Stanley and to the pages of Locus Communis, my commonplace book. In the shadow of my hurt, forgiveness feels like a decision to reward my enemy. But in the shadow of the cross, forgiveness is merely a gift from one undeserving soul to another. It is when our hearts are stirred that we become most aware of what they contain. Direction, not intention, determines your destination. Here's a question every angry man and woman needs to consider. How long are you going to allow people you don't even like, people who are not in your life, maybe even people who aren't even alive anymore, to control your life? How long? Often, stepping outside your comfort zone is not careless irresponsibility, but a necessary act of obedience. We don't drift in good directions. We discipline and prioritize ourselves there. As leaders, we're never responsible for filling anyone else's cup. Our responsibility is to empty ours. Your beliefs shape your attitudes. So what do you do when you're stuck? The first thing I do when I'm stuck is pray. But I'm not talking about a quick, help me Lord, Sunday's coming prayer. When I get stuck, I get it from my desk to head for my closet. Literally, if I'm at the office, I go over to a corner that I've deemed my closet away from home. I get on my knees and remind God that this was not my idea, it was His. Then I ask God to show me there's something He wants to say to prepare me for what He wants me to communicate to our congregation, to the people. I surrender my ideas, my outline, and my topic. Then I just stay in that quiet place until God quiets my heart. Many times I will have a breakthrough thought or idea that brings clarity to my message and to my life. Like you, I'm simply a mouthpiece. Getting stuck is one way God keeps me ever conscious of that fact, that I'm just a mouthpiece. If you see your brother in need, it doesn't matter if you already gave somewhere else. You should be open to the idea of God using you to meet your brother's unexpected need. That's what it means to be a spontaneous giver. Past boldness is no assurance of future boldness. Boldness demands continual reliance on God's Spirit. The most significant visions are not cast by great orators on the stage. They are cast at the bedsides of our children. The greatest vision casting opportunities happen between the hours of 7:30 and 9:30 p.m. Monday through Sunday. In these closing hours of the day, we have a unique opportunity as parents to plant the seeds of what could be, what should be. Take every opportunity you get. Just as there's a time to discipline your children, there's a time to plant seeds of vision in your children, because the time will come when you don't have that opportunity. Do not strive to be a well-rounded leader. Instead, discover your zone and stay there. Then delegate everything else. Admitting your weakness is a sign of strength. Acknowledging weakness doesn't make a leader less effective. Everyone in your organization, your ministry benefits when you delegate responsibilities that fall outside your core competency. Thoughtful delegation will allow someone else in your organization to shine. Your weakness is someone else's opportunity. Leadership is not always about getting things done right. Leadership is about getting things done through other people. The people who follow us are exactly where we have led them. If there's no one to whom we can delegate, it's our own fault. Wow. As a leader gifted by God to do a few things well, it's not right for you to attempt to do everything. upgrade your performance by playing to your strengths and delegating your weaknesses. There are many things I can do, but I have to narrow it down to the one thing I must do. The secret of concentration and focus is elimination. Devoting a little of yourself to everything means committing a great deal of yourself to nothing. My competence in these areas defines my success as a pastor, as a lawyer, as a teacher. A 60-hour work week will not compensate for a poorly delivered sermon. People don't show up on Sunday morning because I'm a good pastor, a good leader, a good shepherd, a good counselor. In my world, it is my communication skills that make the difference. So this is where I focus my time. To develop a competent team, help the leaders in your organization discover their leadership competences and delegate accordingly. Once you step outside your zone, don't attempt to lead or follow. The less you do, the more you will accomplish. Only those leaders who act boldly in times of crises and change are willing to follow it. Accepting the status quo is equivalent to accepting a death sentence. Where there's no progress, there's no growth. If there's no growth, there's no life. Environments void of change are eventually void of life. So, leaders find themselves in the precarious and often career jeopardizing position of being the one to draw attention to the need for change. Consequently, courage is a non-negotiable quality for the next generation leader. The leader is the one who has the courage to act on what he sees. A leader is someone who has the courage to say publicly what everybody else is whispering privately. It is not his insight that sets the leader apart from the crowd. It is his courage to act on what he sees, to speak up when everyone else is silent. Next generation leaders are those who will rather challenge what needs to change and pay the price and remain silent and die on the inside. The first person to step out in a new direction is viewed as the leader, and being the first to step out requires courage. In this way, courage establishes leadership. Leadership requires the courage to walk in the dark, any kind of leadership. The darkness is the uncertainty that always accompanies change. The mystery of whether or not a new enterprise will pan out. The reservation everyone initially feels when a new idea is introduced. The risk of being wrong. Many who lack the courage to forge ahead alone yearn for someone to take the first step, to go first, to show the way. It could be argued that the dark provides the optimal context for leadership. After all, that the pathway to the future were well lit, it will be crowded, indeed. Fear has kept many would-be leaders on the sidelines, while good opportunities paraded by. They didn't lack insight, they lacked courage. Leaders are not always the first to see the need for change, but they're the first to act. Leadership is about moving boldly into the future in spite of uncertainty and risk. You can't lead without taking risk. You won't take risk without courage. Courage is essential to leadership. Here's a scary thought. What if God called you to give beyond your comfort level? Would you be afraid? Would you try to explain it away or dismiss it as impractical? And in the process, would you miss out on a harvest opportunity for which God had explicitly prospered you in the first place? Do you think God can be trusted? Or do you think you need to take things into your own hands? Here's an appropriate way to use your story, not as an excuse, but as a testimony to God's ability to free you from the past. If it suddenly becomes impossible for us to cover up all the junk when I'm high from the rest of humanity, I have a feeling we'll all get really motivated to deal with the source of what ails us. The root of anger is a perception that something has been taken, something is owed you, and now a debt-to-debtor relationship has been established. Leaders instill courage in the hearts of those who will follow. This rarely happens through words alone. It generally requires action. It goes back to what we said earlier. Somebody has to go first. By going first, the leader furnishes confidence to those who follow. As a next generation leader, you will be called upon to go first. That will require courage. But in stepping out, you will give the gift of courage to those who are watching. What do I believe is impossible to do in my field? But if it could be done, will fundamentally change my business. What would that field is? What has been done is safe. What has been done is safe. Will attempt a solution to a problem that plagues an entire industry. In my case, the local church requires courage. Unsolved problems are gateways to the future. To those who have the courage to ask a question and the tenacity to hang on until they discover or create an answer, to those belongs the future. Don't allow the many good opportunities to divert your attention from the one opportunity that has the greatest potential. Learn to say no. There will always be more opportunities than there is time to pursue them. Leaders worth following are willing to face and embrace current realities regardless of how discouraging or embarrassing it might be. It is impossible to generate sustained growth or progress if your plan for the future is not rooted in reality. Be willing to face the truth, regardless of how painful it might be. If fear causes you to retreat from your dreams, you will never give the world anything new. It is impossible to lead without a dream. When leaders are no longer willing to dream, it's only a short time before followers are unwilling to follow. Will I allow my fear to bind me to mediocrity? Mediocrity. Uncertainty is a permanent part of the leadership landscape. It never goes away. Where there's no uncertainty, there's no longer the need for leadership. The greater the uncertainty, the greater the need for leadership. Your capacity as a leader will be determined by how well you learn to deal with uncertainty. My enemy is not uncertainty. It's not even my responsibility to remove the uncertainty. It's my responsibility to bring clarity to the midst of the uncertainty. As leaders, we can afford to be uncertain, but we cannot afford to be unclear, to lack clarity. People will follow you in spite of a few bad decisions. People will not follow you if you're unclear in your instructions. As a leader, you must develop the elusive skill of leading confidently and purposefully onto uncertain terrain. Next generation leaders must fear a lack of clarity more than a lack of accuracy. The individual in your organization who communicates the clearest vision will often be perceived as a leader. Clarity is perceived as leadership. Uncertainty exposes a lack of knowledge. Pretending exposes a lack of character. Express your uncertainty with confidence. You will never maximize your potential in any area without coaching. It is impossible. Self-evaluation is helpful, but evaluation from someone else is essential. You need a leadership coach. You need a coach. Great leaders are great learners. God in His wisdom has placed men and women around us with the experience and discernment we often lack. Experience alone doesn't make you better at anything. Evaluated experience is what enables you to improve your performance. As a leader, what you don't know can hurt you. What you don't know about yourself can put a lead on your leadership. You owe it to yourself, to those who have chosen to follow you, to open the doors to evaluation. Engage a coach. Success doesn't make anything of consequence easier. Success just raises the stakes. Success brings with it the unanticipated pressure of maintaining success. The more successful you are as a leader, the more difficult this becomes. There's far more pressure at the top of an organization than you might imagine. Leaders who don't listen will eventually be surrounded by people who have nothing to say. Peace is a fruit of the Spirit, not a byproduct of accumulated wealth. I have talked to many individuals who want to discuss their problems, but they don't really have problems. They have chosen to live in the wrong direction. They don't need a solution. they need a new direction. Wow. We're committed to involving as many people as possible, as young as possible, as soon as possible. Sometimes too young and too soon. But we intentionally err on the side of too fast rather than too slow. We don't wait until people feel prepared or fully equipped. Seriously, when is anyone ever completely prepared for ministry? When? Ministry makes people's faith bigger. You want to increase someone's confidence in God, put him in a ministry position where he feels fully equipped. The message your environments communicate have the potential to trump your primary message. If you don't see a mess, if you aren't bothered by clutter, you need to make sure there is someone around you who does see it and is bothered by it. An uncomfortable or distracting setting can derail ministry before it begins. The sermon begins in the parking lot. Assign responsibility, not tasks. Assign responsibility, not tasks. At the end of the day, it's application that makes all the difference. Truth isn't helpful if no one understands or remembers it. If you want a church full of biblically educated believers, just teach what the Bible says. If you want to make a difference in your community and possibly the world, give people handles, next steps, and specific applications. Challenge them to do something. As we've all seen, it is not safe to assume that people automatically know what to do with what they have been taught. They need specific direction. That is hard. This requires an extra step in preparation, but it's how you grow people. Your current template is perfectly designed to produce the result you're currently getting. We must remove every possible obstacle from the path of the disinterested, suspicious, here against my will, would rather be somewhere else, unchurched guests. The parking lot, the hallways, the auditoria, and the stage must be obstacle-free zones. As a preacher, it is my responsibility to offend people with the gospel. That's one reason we work so hard not to offend them in the parking lot, the hallway, at check-in, or in the early portions of our service. We want people to come back the following week another round of offending with the truth of the word. Present the gospel in uncompromising terms. Preach hard against sin and tackle the most emotionally charged topics in culture while providing an environment where unchurched people feel comfortable. The approach a church chooses trumps its purpose every time. Nothing says hypocrite faster than Christians expecting non-Christians to behave like Christians when half the Christians don't act like it half the time. Said it again. Nothing says hypocrite faster than Christians expecting non-Christians to behave like Christians when half the Christians don't act like Christians half the time. When you give non-Christians an out, they respond by leaning in, especially if you invite them rather than expect them. There's a big difference between being expected to do something and being invited to try something. There's an inexorable link between an organization's vision and its appetite for improvement. Vision exposes what is yet to be accomplished. In this way, vision has the power to create a healthy sense of organizational discontent. A leader who continually keeps the vision out in front of his or her staff or people creates a thirst for improvement. Vision-centric churches expect change. Change is a means to an end. Change is critical to making what could and should be a reality. Write your vision in ink. Everything else should be penciled in. Plans change, visions remain the same. It is natural to assume that what worked in the past will always work. But of course, that way of thinking is lethal. And the longer it goes unchallenged, the more difficult it is to identify and eradicate. Every innovation has an expiration date. The primary reason churches cling to outdated models and programs is that they lack leadership. Loyalty publicly results in leverage privately. Loyalty publicly results in leverage privately. Knowledge alone makes Christians haughty and proud. Application of knowledge makes us holy. To ensure that we're leading with our feet firmly planted on the soil of what is, we must live by the seven commandments of present reality, which are: 1. Thou shalt not pretend. 2. Thou shalt not turn a blind eye. 3. Thou shalt not exaggerate. 4. Thou shalt not shoot the bearer of bad news. 5. Thou shalt not hide behind the numbers. 6. Thou shalt not ignore constructive criticism. 7. Thou shalt not isolate thyself. Thou shalt not pretend. Thou shalt not turn a blind eye. Thou shalt not exaggerate. Thou shalt not shoot the bearer of bad news. Thou shalt not hide behind the numbers. Thou shalt not ignore constructive criticism. Thou shalt not isolate thyself. Attempt to lead while turning a blind eye to reality as I tread in water. It can only go on for so long. Eventually you will sink. As a next generation leader, as any kind of leader, be willing to face the truth, regardless of how painful it might be. And if you don't like what you see, change it. It takes a habit to break a habit. You can pray every day for a generous heart, but until you start acting in that direction, nothing's going to change. As you start acting out, greed is supported by an endless cast of what-ifs. Greedy people can never have enough to satisfy the need they feel in light of every conceivable eventuality. Guilt rarely results in positive behavior, but gratitude, great things flow from a heart of gratitude. Every arena of life intersects what's going on in our hearts. Everything passes through on its way to wherever it's going, everything. A gift opens the way for the giver. A gift ushers him into the presence of the great. Proverbs 18 verse 16. Many curry favor with a ruler, and everyone's a friend of a man who gives gifts. Proverbs 19 verse 6. A gift given in secret soothes anger, and a bribe concealed in the cloak pacifies great wrath. Proverbs 21 verse 14. He who oppresses the poor to increase his wealth, and he will give gifts to the rich, but come to poverty. Proverbs 22 verse 16. He who gives to the poor will lack nothing, but he who closes his eyes to them receives many curses. Proverbs 28 verse 27. Leadership clicks and clacks. From Locus Communis, my commonplace book. Blessings.